The Pomona School Board in California is walking back its defund the police agenda by voting unanimously to bring safety officers back to campus after a sharp spike in school violence had them begging for blue.
A lot of stuff have been happening, like stealing and all that stuff, and like fights. So honestly, I think cops should be coming back to school.
For the safety of the students, I think it should.
You'd rather see the cops here.
See.
Army veteran and California congressional candidate Mike Cargile joins me now. Good morning to you, sir.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you on. So the school board voted to remove police officers from campus, and then 3 months later they said maybe that wasn't such a good idea. So what happened?
Well, the parents spoke. See, we had a bunch of activists show up, and this is all on the heels of this vile rhetoric we've seen over and over through the months, that the police here are filled with white supremacists and racists. And this has sort of poisoned the minds of a lot of local officials. So when they had a group of activists from out of town show up and scream, defund the police, it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction that the parents weren't aware of. Fast forward a few months, and then there's a shooting just off campus. And now the parents are very aware that there was no safety precautions in there to protect their children. You know, I've talked to parents, I've talked to administrators, what would happen if you had an active shooter on campus? And they said, we're going to run. Because there's nothing we can do to defend ourselves or the students. The students are on their own, and we're just going to run and leave them.
But even with the activists,
that?
even with the activists saying, you know, the anti-police stuff, I mean, you're talking about kids here. So are you surprised that the school district decided to go the activist route and take the cops out of schools?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, we're talking about people who are in charge of the safety of our children and who can't decide which bathroom to use. It doesn't surprise me. And then you have this reaction. We have a governor who's literally a maniacal governor who's been releasing tens of thousands of hardened criminals into our state. Our neighborhoods, our schools are more dangerous than they've ever been. And then they suddenly, you know, defund their school resource officers. This is the most important program we have as a community outreach. People don't understand. So then when they say they want the police to interact with the neighborhoods, they don't realize that this officer on campus is going to deal with a troubled student and often through their parents, and they're going to get to know the neighborhood. This is the #1 outreach into the communities, but it's also the last line of defense for their
Absolutely.
children.
Mike, that is such a good point. And there is an anti-police advocacy group that responded to this situation of refunding police and bringing them back on campus in your school district. And it says, they say it's wrong and you can't fight violence with police violence. What's your reaction to that?
Well, they don't understand the proper function of the police force. Their duty is to protect and serve. And the men and women of the Pomona Police Department would throw themselves in front of a child to protect them with their very lives.
Yeah. Well,
yes, absolutely.
We understand that you're running for Congress in 2022. Tell us about the election and what motivated you to run.
Obviously, things like this. My opponent is one of the proponents of the defund the police movement. She's part of the George Floyd in policing, where they want to remove qualified immunity for officers. And it's that kind of hateful, racist rhetoric that we have to fight against because it mischaracterizes our law enforcement community. These are the most selfless men and women you've ever met, and they're there to safeguard these kids and their families.
Yeah, Mike Cargile, thank you so much for waking up early with us, although you told me in the break you haven't yet gone to bed, which is no surprise. 1:34 West Coast time. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you bet, Todd.
I remember those long West Coast nights.